She was built to destroy, unstoppable, unbreakable, feared across galaxies. No war ever slowed her, no enemy ever stood a chance, until one man with no armor, no weapons, and no fear stepped into her path. What happens when raw power meets unshakable stillness? This is the story of a warrior who forgot her soul, and the human who helped her remember it. Stay with us, because this isn't just a fight. It's a choice that changed the galaxy. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Tira Valen was not born a soldier. She was made into one. On the harsh planet of Naris Prime, the air burned hot and the ground never stopped trembling. It was a place where only the strong survived, and even the strong didn't live long. From the time she could walk, Tira was trained to fight. She was taught to break, to strike, to silence her fear. The Zoran Dominion, her rulers, her makers, had taken her when she was 4 and turned her into a weapon. By the age of 10, she could outrun machines and tear through metal with her bare hands. By 15, she was already leading war squads into enemy planets. She had no friends, no dreams, and no name beyond the one stamped into her armor. Tira, 17. Her muscles were reinforced with synthetic fiber. Her skin was dense and armored. Her mind was sharpened by drills, punishments, and injections that made her stronger than any human should ever be. They called her the Storm from Naris Prime. When her boots hit the ground, people fled. When she walked, cities fell. No one had ever stopped her. No one had ever even hurt her. The Zoran Dominion sent her where others failed. Fleets that resisted would fall within days of her arrival. Planets surrendered before she even landed. They said she could walk through fire. They said her eyes glowed when she fought, and they said her fists could punch through tanks. Most of it was true. Tira didn't care about the stories. She only cared about one thing: winning. Her next mission seemed laughable. Earth, a small planet on the edge of the known systems. Not part of the Galactic Council, not strong, not dangerous. Primitive, said her commander. Stubborn, added another. Their leaders had refused to surrender, and that refusal needed to be punished. Tira rolled her eyes when she heard the plan. I could clear them in a single day, she said. The commanders smiled. That's what we want. Her ship entered Earth's orbit in silence. No warning, no broadcast. She dropped from the sky like a meteor, slamming into a mountain ridge just beyond a major human city. Dust rose into the air. Birds scattered. The earth cracked beneath her feet. She stood still for a moment, scanning her surroundings. The buildings were weak, made of concrete and glass. There were no defense towers, no shield grids, no fighter patrols. Just small ground vehicles and confused human soldiers. They tried to stop her. Of course they did. They fired their bullets, launched their rockets. Some even shouted orders through trembling voices. Tira didn't even slow down. She walked through it all, through fire, through metal, through their fear. Their weapons melted in her hands. Their machines exploded under her fists. In 10 minutes, the outer defenses were gone. In 15, the sky over the city was filled with smoke. She kept moving. The wind carried the sound of her footsteps like thunder. Panic spread in her wake. People ran, sirens wailed, and still, she felt nothing. No thrill, no excitement, it was too easy. These humans were too soft. She missed a real fight. Then she saw him, one figure, standing alone in the middle of a cracked road. A man dressed in nothing more than old dusty clothes, no armor, no helmet, no weapon, just boots worn thin from walking and a calm expression on his face. Tira paused, curious. He didn't move. He didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. She took a step forward. The ground shook lightly beneath her heel. Who are you? She asked, her voice deep, mechanical, altered by the tech in her mask. The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped toward her. Tira frowned. Run, she warned. I don't kill the weak unless they get in my way. But he didn't run. He didn't speak. He just stood there steady as a stone. The wind died. The fires behind her seemed to quiet. Tira's eyes narrowed. Something about this human was different. She took another step. "Last chance," she said, raising one arm, her fist humming with power. "Move." The man shook his head. "You've done enough," he said softly. His voice was not angry. It wasn't afraid. It was quiet. So quiet it cut through the silence like a blade. Tira laughed. Not a fake laugh, not a mocking one. A, real laugh, deep and cold. "You think you can stop me? Barehanded?" Still, the man didn't blink. Her patience snapped. She launched forward. Her feet cracked the pavement. Her fist flew toward him, a blur of motion strong enough to smash through a tank wall. But then, it stopped. Her punch, unstoppable in every battle she had ever fought, had been caught. By one hand. His. Her systems blinked red. Impact blocked. Force returned. Momentum denied. Tira's eyes widened. Her mind raced. For the first time in her life, she didn't know what had just happened. He looked her in the eye and said, "I'm not here to run." And just like that, something inside her shifted. Something she couldn't name. Something she had never felt before. Not anger, not confusion. Something colder. Something heavier. She stepped back, her eyes locked on the man in front of her, and for the first time since she was 4 years old, Tira Valen, the storm of Naris Prime, felt unsure. Noan Vale had never wanted to fight. He wasn't a soldier and he didn't come from warriors. He had spent most of his life far away from the noise of the world, living in the green valleys at the edge of the northern forests. While the cities of Earth grew tall and bright with machines, and people chased faster weapons and smarter technology, Noan lived quietly. He rose with the sun, worked with his hands, and listened to the wind. He wasn't special. At least that's what most would say. But there was something old in him, something taught long before the world forgot. When he was a boy, Noan had found an old man living deep in the forest. The man moved like nothing Noan had ever seen. His steps were silent. His body flowed through the trees like water. He didn't shout. He didn't force. He moved with control so complete that even wild animals stood still to watch him. Noan watched too, hidden behind leaves day after day until the old man finally turned and spoke without looking. "You've been watching," he said. "Why?" Noan stepped out from his hiding spot and said, "Because I want to learn." The man smiled, slow and kind, and said, "Then listen." And so Noan learned. The old man called the practice silent, brute. It was not fighting, not in the way most people understood. It was learning how to be still, how to breathe with the earth, how to feel before reacting. It was about balance, of thought, of body, of spirit. While others trained with metal and screens, Noan learned by standing in rivers, holding his breath, keeping his heart steady even as storms rolled above. He practiced movement for years, slow, simple, perfect. He learned to hear more than just sound, to see more than what eyes showed, to act only when the moment was right. As the world changed, Noan stayed the same. The cities became louder, the skies busier, the leaders more afraid. People added wires to their arms and chips in their heads. But Noan didn't want upgrades. He only wanted to understand himself. Then the sky cracked open. Tira Valen fell to earth like a god of war. The stories came quickly. How she tore through steel. How her fists crushed vehicles like toys. How no bullet touched her. Noan saw the smoke from far away. He smelled the burning metal in the air. He heard the cries in the wind. And something inside him shifted. He didn't want to fight, but he couldn't stay still. The day he walked toward the city, people were already fleeing. Soldiers looked at him like he was lost. They warned him to turn back. "There's nothing you can do," they said. But Noan kept walking. Each step was slow, calm, quiet. His heart didn't race. His breath didn't quicken. He had spent years preparing for nothing, and now that moment had arrived. And now he stood on the road, facing a woman who could bring down buildings. Tira Velan was everything the stories said she would be: tall, armored, deadly. Her voice rumbled like thunder. Her body looked like it had been carved from war itself. She had destroyed everything in her path. But to no one she looked tired, not in her arms or legs, but in her eyes. He didn't speak at first. He let her talk, let her threaten, and then, as her fist came down like lightning, he caught it. Not with strength, with timing, with balance, with control. He didn't move her, he only stopped her. And that was enough. Her reaction was quiet shock. Her eyes widened. She stepped back, not from pain, but from confusion. He had done something that didn't fit into her world. She had faced machines, monsters, armies. They all followed patterns. All had weaknesses she could tear apart, but no one was not like them. She came at him again, faster this time. The ground shook as she moved. Her strikes were louder, heavier, but he flowed with them. He didn't hit her. He didn't resist. He stepped through her power, redirecting it. She swung wide. He ducked. She kicked. He turned. She jumped. He stepped aside. It was like dancing, but deadly, and she could not touch him. Her sensors failed. Her logic broke. She began to sweat. Her breaths grew heavy. She tried everything: tricks, speed, brute force, but nothing worked. No one saw it then. The tiny moment when her movement started to change. She wasn't just attacking, now. She was questioning. Why wasn't she winning? Why didn't he fall? He didn't taunt her. He didn't gloat. He only spoke when it mattered. "You forgot what real strength is," he said after dodging another blow. She hissed back. "Flesh is weak. It breaks," he replied, calm as ever. "Only when the mind is weak." The fight slowed. Her steps became heavier. His remained light. She asked, "Who trained you?" He answered simply, "Someone who believed strength comes from the inside." Tira stared at him. This man, this quiet, still man, was turning her world upside down. She had been raised to crush, to kill, to fear nothing. And yet here she was, surrounded by destruction she had caused, standing across from a man who didn't run, didn't fight back, and still wasn't losing. She felt something creeping in, a new feeling. Not weakness, not pain. It was something else, something she didn't have a name for. Doubt. No one stood as steady as ever, his breathing calm, his hands at his sides. The fire behind him danced in the wind, but he didn't move. He didn't need to. For the first time in her life, Tira Velan felt like the storm wasn't around her. It was inside her. The sky above the broken city was still dark with smoke. Fires burned quietly in the distance, and the wind carried the smell of metal, dust, and silence. Tira Velan stood in the center of the road, her breath slow, her heart heavy. She had never breathed this hard before. Not in battle, not in training. Her arms were sore, her legs steady, but her mind was no longer calm. Something inside her had been shaken loose, and she didn't know how to put it back. Across from her, Noan Vale stood like a tree rooted in stone. His body carried no armor, no weapons, no tech. His hands were scratched, his shirt torn, and a thin line of blood traced his cheek. But he stood with perfect balance, as if none of it mattered. His eyes never left hers. Not with challenge, not with fear, just focus. Tira couldn't look away. She had fought for years, led armies, crushed empires. But now she couldn't even beat one man. Not because he was stronger. Not because he was faster. Because he was something else, something she didn't understand. "You're not like the others," she said at last, her voice lower than before. "You don't fight like a soldier." Noan didn't smile. He just nodded once and replied, "I never wanted to fight." Tira frowned. "Then why are you standing here?" Because someone needed to, he said softly. The answer made her jaw tighten. She had been taught that battles were won with strength, with speed, with fear. She had been trained to see hesitation as death, kindness as weakness, peace as surrender. But this man stood without fear, without rage, and he was still standing. That made no sense to her. Her helmet hissed as she pulled it off and let it drop beside her. For the first time, her face met the wind, smeared with ash, soaked in sweat and filled with questions. Her silver hair, usually tied tightly back, fell across her shoulders in tangled strands. She looked at Noan, not as an enemy, but as a mystery. You don't kill, she said, almost like a test. No, he answered, even if it means losing. He nodded. Even then, she stared at him. That wasn't war. That wasn't survival. That was something else. Something strange. Then you don't understand war, she said. Noan looked around them, at the ruins, the shattered buildings, the black sky. No, he said quietly. I understand it better than most. The words hit her like a soft blow. They didn't hurt her body, but they stirred something in her chest. For years, she had followed orders without question. Her victories had brought medals, praise, and fear, but not peace. Never peace. That word was foreign to her. A story others told themselves before they were broken. The comms in her ear buzzed. The voice of her commander crackled through. Tira, it barked. Status report. Is the target neutralized? She didn't answer. Her eyes were still on Noan. Tira, the voice shouted again. Respond. Still nothing. She slowly reached up and turned off her comms. The silence that followed was louder than the shouting. She stepped forward just once, close enough to see the calmness in Noan's expression. He wasn't proud. He wasn't pleased. He just was. That made her uneasy. Why didn't you finish me? She asked. Noan took a small step too. Because I don't want to destroy you. She blinked. Then you're a fool. No, he said, voice gentle. I've seen destruction. I've seen people lose themselves in rage and armor. I won't become that. Tira turned away, unsure of what to say. The ground beneath her feet, once so firm, felt strange now. Not weak, just different. She looked at her own hands. Hands that had shattered walls, broken weapons, killed without pause. They trembled slightly. Not from pain, not from fear. From something else. She didn't know what to call it. She scanned Noan again. Her battle systems checked for hidden signals, enhancements, armor. Nothing. He was still just a man. But when she had hit him, it had felt like striking the earth itself. He hadn't moved. He hadn't flinched. Her strength meant nothing to him. That was terrifying in a way she couldn't explain. You're hiding something, she said. I'm not hiding anything. Noan replied. You're just not used to seeing strength that doesn't shout. Her brow furrowed. She had been raised in noise, in drills and screams, in the clash of metal and fire. Silence made her nervous. It was the space between hits, the pause before, pain. But here she was, standing in it, feeling something rise in her that she had never felt before. Doubt. The smoke behind them swirled as winds shifted. In the distance, soldiers watched, recording everything. The galaxy watched too, satellites beaming the images across systems. Everyone who had feared her was now watching her hesitate, watching her stand still. She hated stillness. I should attack again, she said aloud, mostly to herself. You can, Noan said, or you can ask a better question. Tira turned to him, confused. What question? He looked at her, not as a threat, but as someone lost in their own war. Ask yourself who you are without the fight. That was the hardest question she had ever heard. Her mind pushed back. Her pride screamed. She had never been anything else. The Dominion gave her a name, a number, a purpose. She had followed it all. Never once had she stopped to ask if she wanted to, until now, I don't know, she said finally. No one nodded. Then maybe it's time to find out. And for the first time in her life, Tira Valen felt something shift. Not on the battlefield, but inside her. A question had been planted. A quiet, growing thought. What if she didn't have to be what they made her? What if she could choose something else? She didn't have the answer yet. But for the first time, she wanted to know. The sky above the city rumbled with power. A massive Zaran warship had broken through the clouds, its engines boiling the air and its weapons glowing with red light. From the ground, it looked like a floating mountain of steel, ready to bring down fire and erase everything below. Soldiers, on both sides, froze. Civilians held their breath. Everyone knew what was about to happen. If the order came, the ship would destroy the entire city in seconds. And in the middle of it all stood Tira Valen. Her armor was cracked, parts of it burned or broken from the fight. Her hands were scratched, her body bruised, but her eyes were clear. She no longer looked like a perfect machine. She looked human. The voice of her commander boomed through every comm system. Tira, you have failed to carry out your mission. You are ordered to stand down and return for judgment. There was no kindness in the voice, only command, only control. Just like it had always been. Tira didn't respond right away. She looked at Noan Vale, still standing quietly nearby, his arms at his sides, his presence like a calm fire. He didn't tell her what to do. He didn't beg her to surrender or fight. He just waited, and in that stillness she made a choice. She turned toward the sky, raised her arm, and closed her hand in a sharp gesture. It was the signal to stop. A ceasefire. All around her, her soldiers hesitated. Some blinked in confusion. Others lowered their weapons slowly. One young soldier, barely out of training, stepped forward and dropped to one knee. Then another, and another. The fear they had followed for years was starting to fade. They weren't sure what they were feeling, but it wasn't the same as before. For the first time, they saw Tira not as a weapon, but as a person. The commander's voice roared, "Again, you are disobeying a direct order. You will be seen as a traitor." Tira didn't flinch. She shut off her comms again. The silence felt right. No one stepped closer. "You know what this means," he said gently. She nodded. "They'll come. For me." He looked at the sky. Maybe. Or maybe they'll realize the whole galaxy is watching. Satellites above were recording everything. Streams across systems were broadcasting the moment. Leaders of distant worlds were watching, not just because of Tira's power, but because of her pause, her decision. This was no longer just a fight. It was a message. Tira took a deep breath and walked forward. Slowly, calmly, toward the center of the battlefield. She stopped beneath the warship and opened a channel not with her commander, but to everyone who could hear. "I am Tira Valen," she said. Her voice was strong but no longer cold. "I was made to destroy, trained to obey. I was told that pain was truth and war was life. But today, a man with no armor showed me something I had forgotten. A different kind of strength." She paused. The world listened. "I am not a weapon," she continued. "I am not your machine. And if you destroy me now, let the galaxy see what you fear most, not failure, but freedom." There was a long silence. Then the red lights on the warship slowly faded to yellow. Its weapons dimmed. It hovered in place for a moment, then began to rise. Higher. Away. Until it vanished behind the clouds. Tira looked back at Noan. He hadn't moved. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate, he just stood. Steady as always, his eyes calm. She walked back to him, unsure of what to say. "You were right," she said softly. "About what?" he asked. "I'm more than what they made me." Noan nodded. "You always were. You just needed to see it." Behind them, the soldiers began to shift. The ones who had followed Tira into battle now looked to her for something else. A young fighter named Ryan stepped forward. His voice trembled. "Will you teach us?" he asked. Tira looked at their faces, some afraid, some lost, some hopeful. "Yes," she said. Weeks passed, then months. The ruined city became something new. Not a battlefield, but a school. Not a training camp for war, but a place to learn stillness, awareness, balance. Soldiers, workers, even young learners came from across systems, human and Zarin alike. They all came with the same question: what comes after war? Tira taught them not how to destroy, but how to understand themselves. She trained them not in anger, but in patience. No one came and went, always quietly, always simply. He never asked for thanks. He only helped when asked. That was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rebuilt towers, Tira found Noah near the edge of the old ruins. He was watching the wind move through the trees. She stood beside him for a moment before speaking. "You never asked for anything. Why did you fight me?" she asked. He looked ahead, his voice calm as always. "Because someone had to remind you that you had a choice." She smiled. A real one. Not the sharp grin of victory, but a warm, peaceful smile of someone who finally understood. "You changed me," she said. "No," he replied. "You changed yourself. I just opened the door." Tira nodded and watched as Noah walked away into the forest, quiet as ever. She turned back toward the training field, where students were practicing slow, careful movements under a fading sky. And for the first time in her life, she felt something deeper than power. She felt peace.